The military history of Japan is characterized by a long period of clan warfare until the 12th century AD, followed by feudal wars which sometimes culminated in a military government called a shogunate. Feudal militarism transitioned to imperial militarism in the 19th century after the landings of Admiral Perry and the elevation of the Meiji Emperor, leading to rampant imperialism until Japan's defeat by the Allies in World War II. The occupation of Japan marks the inception of modern Japanese military history with the drafting of a new constitution by U.S. forces, prohibiting the Japanese ability to wage war against other nations. Prehistory. Recent archaeological research has uncovered traces of wars as far back as the Jomon period between the various tribes existing on the Japanese archipelago. Some theorists believe that shortly after the Yayoi period, horse riders from the Korean peninsula invaded southern Kyushu, then spread all the way to northern Honshu. This is when horse riding and iron tools were first introduced to the islands. Jomon period. Near the end of the Jomon period, villages and towns became surrounded by moats and wooden fences due to increasing violence within or between communities. Some remains were found with head and arrow injuries. Battles were fought with weapons like the sword, sling, spear, and bow and arrow. Yayoi period. Bronze goods and bronze-making techniques from the Asian mainland reached what is now Japan as early as the 3rd century BC. It is believed that horses were introduced to Japan near the end of this time, as were bronze, and later iron implements and weapons. Archaeological findings suggest that bronze and iron weapons were not used for war until later, particularly at the beginning of the Yamato era, as the metal weapons found from the remains do not show were consistent with use as weapons. The transition from the Jomon to Yayoi, and later to the Yamato period is likely to have been characterized by violent struggle as the natives were soon displaced by the invaders and the vastly superior military technology. Around this time, the Sangwoji first refer to the nation of Wo. According to this work, Wa was divided into more than 100 tribes, and for some 70 or 80 years there were many disturbances and warfare. About 30 of the communities had been united by a sorceress queen named Pimiko. She sent an emissary named Nishimi with a tribute of slaves and cloth to Daifang in China, establishing diplomatic relations with Kao. Kao was competing with the Three Kingdoms, ancient and classical Japan. By the end of the 4th century, the Yamato clan was well settled on the Nara plain with considerable control over the surrounding areas. 5 kings of Wa sent envoys to China for the dominion of the Japanese islands. The Nippon Shoki described that Yamato was even strong enough to have sent an army against the powerful state of Goguryeo. Yamato Japan had close relations with the southwestern Korean kingdom of Baekje. In 663, Japan, supporting Baekje, was defeated by the allied forces of Tang China and Silla in Korean peninsula. As a result, the Japanese were banished from the Korean peninsula. To defend the Japanese archipelago, a military base was constructed in Dazaifu, Fukuoka of Kyushu. Near the end of the Heian period, the samurai became a powerful political force, thus starting the feudal period. Yamato period. Ancient Japan had close ties with the Gaya Confederacy in the Korean peninsula as well as with the Korean kingdom of Baekje. Gaya exported abundant quantities of iron armor and weapons to Wa, and there may have even been a Japanese military post there with Gaya and Baekje. Cooperation. In 552, the ruler of Baekje appealed to Yamato for help against its enemies, the neighboring Silla. Along with his emissaries to the Yamato court, the Baekje king sent bronze images of Buddha, some Buddhist scriptures, and a letter praising Buddhism. These gifts triggered a powerful burst of Japanese interest in Buddhism. The Battle of Batgang took place in 663, near the conclusion of the Korean Three Kingdoms period. The Nippon Shokai records that Yamato sent 32,000 troops and 1,000 ships to support Baekje against the Silla Tang force. However, these ships were intercepted by a Silla Tang fleet and defeated. Baku, without aid and surrounded by Silla and Tang forces on the land, collapsed. A hostile Silla prevented Japan from having any further meaningful contact with the Korean peninsula until far later in time. The Japanese then turned directly to China. Nara period. In many ways, the Nara period was the beginning of Japanese culture becoming what we today think of as Japanese. It was in this period that Buddhism, the Chinese writing system, and law system first became codified in Japan. The country was united and centrally governed for the first time, and much of the basics of the feudal system were set down, while much of the discipline, weapons, armor, and technique of the samurai was probably not developed yet. The fundamentals of the Japanese feudal warrior were begun, as technologies of mounted archery, swordsmanship, and spearfighting were adopted. Succession disputes were prevalent here, just as in most of the later periods, and the Nara period also saw the first shogun, Otomo no Otomaro. Heian period. The Heian period, militarily, consisted mainly of conflicts and battles between samurai clans over political power and influence, especially fought over control over the line of succession to the chrysanthemum throne. The imperial family struggled against the control of the Fujiwara clan, which almost exclusively monopolized the post of regent. Feudal conflicts over land, political power, and influence eventually culminated in the Genpei War between the Terra and Minamoto clans, and a large number of smaller clans allied with one side or the other. The end of the Genpei War brought about the end of the Heian and the beginning of the Kamakura period. During this period, samurai were still, largely, archers first and foremost, before swordsmen. Nearly all duels and battles began with an exchange of arrow fire, before single combat was entered, with sword and dagger. The 12th century conflicts, particularly the Genpei War, and the establishment of the Kamakura Shogunate that followed, mark the rise of the samurai class over the court nobility. Shogunates, essentially military governments, dominated Japanese politics for nearly 700 years, subverting the power of the emperor and of the court. Militarily speaking, this period also marks a crucial shift from a state that was united in relative peace against outside threats, to one that did not fear invasion and instead focused on internal division and clashes between societal factions. With the exception of the Mongol invasions of the 13th century, Japan did not face considerable outside threats until the arrival of Europeans in the 16th century. Thus, pre-modern Japanese military history is largely defined not by wars with other states, but by internal conflicts.